Princess Vera Talshin stood at the observation window of the neutral station, watching the stars. Her reflection stared back at her. Blue skin, silver markings along her face, golden eyes that revealed nothing of the storm inside her. She wore the formal robes of her people, deep purple with gold thread. In 3 hours, she would meet the human she was supposed to marry. 3 years of war had brought them to this moment. 3 years of death and destruction. The Caltherian Empire had lost millions. The humans had lost just as many. Every family had buried someone. Every world had burned in some way. And now, the diplomats said marriage would end it all. Vera pressed her hand against the cold glass. She had volunteered for this. Her father, the emperor, had gathered his children and explained the situation. The humans wanted peace, but needed a guarantee. The Caltherians needed peace but could not appear weak. A marriage between their peoples would seal the treaty. It was tradition, her father said. Ancient tradition. Her older sisters had remained silent. They had their own families, their own lives. Her younger brother was too young. That left Vera. She was third daughter, trained in diplomacy, educated in 7 languages. She was expendable in the line of succession but valuable enough to matter. "I will do it," she had said. Her father's relief had been visible. "You honor our house, daughter. Honor, duty, sacrifice." These were Caltherian values. She had been raised on them. But now, staring at the stars, she wondered if she was brave or simply resigned to her fate. The door behind her opened with a soft hiss. Commander Zin entered, her personal guard since childhood. He was tall even for a Caltherian, his skin darker blue than hers, his markings sharp and angular. "The human ship has docked," Zin said quietly. Vera nodded but did not turn. "What do you know of him?" "Captain Jake Morrison. 28 standard years old. Military officer. Combat pilot with many decorations. His service record is impressive." Zin paused. "For a human, you do not approve." "I do not trust them. 3 years ago, they were enemies. Now we pretend to be friends because of politics." His voice carried the weight of someone who had fought in the war, who had lost friends. Vera finally turned to face him. "We are not pretending, Zin. We are trying." "Perhaps." He did not sound convinced. "Will you meet him now?" "In the formal chamber. Let us not keep Captain Morrison waiting." The walk through the station felt longer than it should. Neutral stations were strange places, designed to offend no one, and therefore satisfy no one. Gray walls, bland lighting, air that smelled of recyclers and nothing else. Diplomats from a dozen species walked these halls, all working to keep the galaxy from tearing itself apart. The formal chamber was slightly better. It had seating for both species, a table designed for negotiations, and actual decorations on the walls. Art from various worlds, meant to show unity. Vera found it hollow. Admiral Helen Carter was already there. The human admiral was older, perhaps 50 years. With gray hair cut short and sharp eyes that missed nothing, she wore her uniform with the ease of someone who had worn it for decades. 2 other human officers stood behind her. "Princess Vera," Admiral Carter said, inclining her head in a gesture of respect. "Admiral Carter, I am told Captain Morrison has arrived. He's preparing. He should be here shortly." The Admiral gestured to a chair. "Please, sit." Vera sat, keeping her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. Zin took his position behind her, a silent guardian. The minutes stretched. Vera studied the humans. They looked fragile compared to Caltherians, smaller, softer. It was hard to believe they had fought her people to a standstill. The door opened again. The man who entered was not what Vera expected. Captain Jake Morrison was tall for a human, but still shorter than her. He had dark hair, brown eyes, and a face that seemed kind. He wore his uniform well, but there was nothing aggressive about him. No warrior's pride in his stance. He simply walked in, saw her, and stopped. For a moment, They stared at each other across the room. Then Jake crossed the distance and extended his hand. A human gesture of greeting. Vera had studied it. She stood and took his hand. His grip was firm but not crushing. His skin was warm. "Princess Vera," he said. His voice was calm, measured. "I'm Jake Morrison. It's an honor to meet you." She searched his face for deception, for resentment, for anything that would tell her what he really thought. She found only a quiet tiredness and something that might have been resignation. He did not want this either. "Captain Morrison," she replied. "The honor is mine." They released hands and stood there, uncertain. Admiral Carter cleared her throat. "Perhaps we should sit and discuss the arrangements?" They sat. Vera on one side of the table, Jake on the other, with their respective delegations behind them. For the next hour, they discussed the wedding ceremony. It would blend both cultures. Caltherian vows of honor, human vows of partnership. It would be broadcast across both empires. A symbol of unity. Jake spoke little, letting the Admiral handle most of the discussion. But when he did speak, his words were careful and respectful. He asked about Caltherian customs. He wanted to understand them, not mock them. That surprised Vera. When the formal discussions ended, Admiral Carter and Zinn stepped away to arrange security details. That left Vera and Jake alone at the table. The silence was awkward. "I read about your world," Jake said finally. "The crystal forests of Kalthos Prime. They sound beautiful." "They are." Vera studied him. "You have an interest in xenobiology?" "History, actually. How different species develop. How they see the universe." He smiled. But it was sad. "Seems like we see things differently, which is why we ended up fighting. And now we are supposed to end that fight by marrying strangers." "Yes." Jake met her eyes. "I'm sorry. This isn't fair to you." His apology caught her off guard. "It is not fair to either of us." "No. But it might save lives." He leaned back in his chair. "I lost my family in this war. Parents. A sister. If marrying someone I don't know prevents another family from going through that, then I can do it." Vera felt something shift in her chest. Sympathy. Perhaps. Or recognition. "I volunteered for the same reason. Too many have died." "Then maybe we can make this work," Jake said. "Not as a real marriage, I mean, but as partners trying to do the right thing." "Partners." Vera repeated the word. It felt better than husband and wife. Less permanent. Less frightening. "Yes. We can try." They talked for another hour. Careful conversation, like two people walking on ice, testing each step. But beneath the caution, Vera sensed something genuine in Jake. He was not a politician playing games. He was a man doing his duty, just as she was doing hers. When they finally parted, Jake offered his hand again. This time, Vera took it with less hesitation. "See you at the wedding," he said. "Yes, at the wedding." Vera watched him leave. Zinn appeared at her side. "Your assessment?" "He is not what I expected." "In what way?" Vera considered the question. Jake Morrison did not seem like a warrior. He seemed tired, sad, and determined. There was a gentleness to him that did not match his combat record. It confused her. "I expected someone harder," she admitted. "Someone who would resent this arrangement. Perhaps he hides it well. Perhaps." But Vera did not think so. She had seen genuine emotion in those brown eyes, pain and resignation, and a stubborn will to do what needed to be done. 2 weeks later, they were married. The ceremony took place on the same neutral station, in a hall large enough to hold representatives from both empires. Vera wore traditional Caltherian marriage robes, silver and white. Jake wore his formal uniform. They spoke the vows written by committees, words meant to satisfy both cultures. But when Jake took her hands and said, "I promise to honor you and stand beside you," he sounded like he meant it. And when Vera replied, I accept your promise and offer mine in return. She realized she wanted to mean it too. The war was over. The marriage had begun. What came next? Neither of them knew. 6 months of marriage had taught Vera that living with a human was strange. Their quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel Covenant were designed for both species. Half Caltherian, half human. The temperature controls stayed at a compromise that left both of them slightly uncomfortable. The food processors held recipes from both worlds. Even the sleeping area was divided, though they each had their own space. A political marriage did not require them to share everything. Vera sat at her desk, reviewing reports on agricultural exchanges between colonies. Boring work, but necessary. Across the room, Jake was cooking something at the human food station. The smell was unfamiliar but not unpleasant. "Are you hungry?" Jake asked without turning around. "I ate earlier. This is different. It's called pasta, comfort food from Earth." He glanced over his shoulder. "My mother used to make it." Vera saved her work and walked over. Jake was stirring something in a pot, steam rising. He had removed his uniform jacket and rolled up his sleeves. It was the most casual she had seen him. "Your mother," Vera said carefully. They did not often speak of his lost family. "Yeah, she was a teacher, loved to cook." Jake's voice was steady, but Vera had learned to hear the pain underneath. "Anyway, there's plenty if you want to try." She did not refuse. They ate together at the small table between their two sides of the quarters. The pasta was soft and covered in a red sauce that tasted of vegetables and spices. It was very different from Caltherian food, which tended to be raw and mineral-rich. "Do you like it?" Jake asked. "It is warm," Vera said. "Caltherians do not usually cook our food." "I know. But sometimes, warm is good." They ate in companionable silence. This had become their pattern over 6 months. Small gestures of sharing. Learning each other's habits. Jake had started studying the Caltherian language seriously, practicing with her each evening. Vera had introduced him to her favorite literature, though the philosophical texts clearly confused him. "Can I ask you something?" Jake set down his fork. "Yes. Why did you really volunteer for this? I mean, I know you said it was duty, but there had to be more to it." Vera considered the question. They had been careful with each other, polite and distant. But lately, the distance had been shrinking. Perhaps it was time for honesty. "My older sisters both had arranged marriages," she said. "Traditional Caltherian matches, chosen by my father. They are not happy. I saw that growing up. When this opportunity came, I thought at least I would be choosing my duty. And perhaps marrying a human would be different." "Different how?" "Humans do not have the same expectations. You do not require your wives to be warriors or bear many children or fulfill 100 social obligations." She met his eyes. "I thought perhaps I could just be myself." Jake nodded slowly. "And, can you? Be yourself. I mean, I am trying to learn how." Vera paused. "What about you? You have excellent service records. You could have refused this assignment." "No, I couldn't." Jake's expression grew distant. "My last mission was a combat drop on Station Xeris. We were trying to evacuate civilians before your fleet arrived. I got most of them out, but not all. 140 people died because I wasn't fast enough. That was not your fault. War is... I know what war is." Jake's voice was quiet but firm. "I've been fighting since I was 20. 7 years of combat. I've killed people. I've watched friends die. And for what? Because our governments couldn't figure out how to talk to each other?" He looked at her directly. "When Admiral Carter asked me to volunteer for this, I saw a way out. A way to make my service actually mean something. If our marriage could help end the war, then maybe all those deaths would count for something." Vera felt the weight of his words. She had seen him as gentle, perhaps even weak by Caltherian standards, but there was steel underneath. quiet determination, a sense of purpose that matched her own. Then we are both trying to make meaning from loss, she said. Yeah, I guess we are. That conversation changed something between them. They began to talk more freely. Jake told her about growing up on Earth, about his fascination with ancient military history, how he had studied strategies from wars fought thousands of years ago. He showed her a small collection of books he kept on an electronic reader. Sun Tzu, Clausewitz, names that meant nothing to Vera but clearly meant everything to him. She shared her own passion for xenobiology. How different species adapted to different worlds. The incredible diversity of life in the galaxy. Jake listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed he was really paying attention. You would have made a good scientist, he said one evening. And you would have made a good scholar, she replied. Why did you become a soldier? Jake's smile faded. Family tradition, partly. But mostly because I wanted to protect people. The Federation was expanding into contested territory. Pirates, raiders, hostile species. Someone had to stand between them and the colonies. Noble. Not really. I'm good at violence. That's just the truth. He said it matter-of-factly, without pride or shame. Better to use that skill protecting people than pretending I'm something I'm not. Vera thought about that. Caltharians believed that skill in combat was the highest virtue. But Jake seemed almost apologetic about it, as if being good at fighting was a flaw rather than a strength. Humans were strange. Their ship traveled constantly. 1 week at a Caltharian colony world, attending ceremonies and giving speeches about unity. The next week at a human settlement, touring factories and meeting with local leaders. Everywhere they went, people watched them carefully, measuring them, judging whether this peace would hold. At a reception on the human world of New Terra, a reporter asked Vera what she thought of her husband. The question was blunt, meant to provoke. Vera kept her expression neutral. Captain Morrison is a man of honor. He respects my culture and works hard for peace. I am fortunate. End quote. The reporter pressed. But, do you love him? Beside her, Jake tensed slightly. Vera felt the attention of 100 people focus on her. Love was not part of their arrangement. It was not expected. But saying so would damage the image of unity they were supposed to project. Love comes in many forms, Vera said carefully. Respect is a kind of love. Trust is a kind of love. Captain Morrison has both. From me, it was a diplomatic answer. But as she said it, Vera realized it was also true. She did respect Jake. She was learning to trust him. Perhaps that was enough. Later, in their quarters, Jake brought her tea. Thank you for what you said, he told her. I know that question was unfair. It was calculated to create doubt about our marriage. Yeah. Jake sat down across from her. Does it bother you that we're basically living a lie? Vera sipped the tea. It was bitter, but warm. We are not lying. We are married. We live together. We work together. That is real. But we're not in love. No. Vera met his eyes. Should we be? Jake was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. Sometimes I think it would be easier if we were. Other times, I think it would make everything more complicated. Caltharians do not marry for love, Vera said. We marry for duty, for alliance, for the good of our houses. Love, if it comes, is a bonus. That sounds lonely, perhaps. But it is honest. Human marriages claim to be about love, yet half of them end in separation. At least we know what we have. Alderwell. 8. A partnership. Yes. A partnership built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Vera paused. Is that so bad? No, Jake said after a moment. No. It's not bad at all. They sat together in comfortable silence. Outside the viewing port, stars drifted past. The Covenant was between destinations, moving through the vast emptiness of space. Just like their marriage, Vera thought. Between one thing and another, trying to find its way. Commander Zin visited the next day while Jake was at a strategy meeting with the ship's captain. The Caltharian warrior looked uncomfortable in the human-sized corridors. "You are well, princess?" Zin asked formally. "I am well, old friend. Please, speak freely." Zin's shoulders relaxed slightly. "I worry for you. This marriage, this life, it is not what you deserved. I have everything I need, but not everything you want." Zin stepped closer. "I see how you watch him. The human. You are beginning to care for him. And," Vera did not deny it, "would that be so terrible? It would be dangerous. This piece is fragile. If it breaks, you will be caught between your people and your husband. Which will you choose?" The question hit harder than Vera expected. She had not thought that far ahead. The peace seemed stable. The treaty was signed. But Zin was right. If war came again, what would she do? "I would choose to prevent the war," she said finally. "That may not be possible. Then I will face that choice when it comes. For now, I choose to believe in what we are building." Zin looked at her with something like sadness. "You have changed, princess. 6 months ago, you would not have hesitated. You would have said you choose your people. Perhaps that is good. Perhaps that is the point of this marriage. To make the choice harder. To make peace more valuable than pride." Zin bowed and left without another word. Vera stood alone in their quarters, thinking about his question. Could she choose Jake over her people? Could she choose her people over Jake? She did not know the answer. That evening, Jake taught her a human game called chess. Black and white pieces on a checkered board, each with different moves. The goal was to trap the opponent's king. "It's ancient," Jake explained. "Thousands of years old. Every culture that played it changed the rules slightly, but the core stayed the same." Vera was terrible at first. She kept losing her pieces in careless attacks. But Jake was patient, showing her strategies, teaching her to think several moves ahead. By their third game, she was starting to understand. "You're getting better," Jake said as she captured his knight. "This game requires thinking like the enemy." Exactly. The best generals always understood their opponents. They played into the late hours. And somewhere between one game and the next, Vera reached across the board and put her hand over Jake's. He looked up, surprised. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For being patient with me. For respecting my culture. For trying to make this work." Jake's expression softened. He turned his hand over and gently squeezed hers. "We're in this together. That's what partners do." Rubble. They stayed like that for a moment. Hands joined over a chessboard. The first real gesture of affection between them. It was small. It was careful. But it was real. And Vera realized that somewhere in the past 6 months, she had stopped thinking of Jake Morrison as the human she had been forced to marry. She was starting to think of him as simply Jake. Her partner. Maybe, eventually, something more. New Kalthos was beautiful. The colony world sat on the border between human and Caltharian space. It had been one of the most contested systems during the war. 3 major battles had been fought in orbit. Thousands had died. Now, 9 months after the peace treaty, the colony was celebrating. Schools were being rebuilt. Children were laughing again. It was supposed to be a symbol of hope. Vera stood on a platform, overlooking a crowd of mixed species. Humans and Caltharians together, waiting for her to speak. Beside her, Jake stood in his dress uniform. They had arrived that morning for the dedication ceremony of a new school. Both species had contributed to building it. A joint project. Another symbol. "They look happy," Jake said quietly. "They do." Vera felt genuine pleasure at the sight. This was what their marriage was supposed to achieve. This peace. These smiling faces. The colony's governor, a Caltherian named Sarat, stepped forward to introduce them. But before he could speak, the sky changed. It started as a distant roar. Then the air itself seemed to shake. Vera looked up and saw ships dropping out of hyperspace. 20 vessels. Caltherian design. But they were not displaying peace signals. They were displaying war colors. Get down. Jake's hand grabbed her arm and pulled her behind the podium. Explosions erupted across the colony as orbital bombardment began. The crowd scattered in panic. Screaming filled the air. Buildings that had just been rebuilt were torn apart by weapons fire. Governor Sarat was shouting into his communicator, trying to reach the orbital defense platforms. His face went pale. They're gone. The defense grid is destroyed. All of it. How many ships? Jake's voice had changed. The gentleness was gone. Now he sounded sharp, focused. 20 warships. Ground troops are landing already. Sarat looked at Jake desperately. We have no military here. Just colony security. Maybe 200 trained fighters. Then we use what we have. Jake stood and looked across the panicking crowd. His eyes were different now. Hard. Calculating. Where's the main civilian shelter? The Central District, underground. It can hold 5,000 people. Get everyone there, now. Jake turned to Vera. I need you to help organize the evacuation. Can you do that? Vera nodded, still processing the sudden shift in Jake's demeanor. This was not the man who played chess with her. This was someone else entirely. Jake grabbed one of the security officers. I need a weapons locker and a communication channel to every security team on this planet. Right now. I Mandan. The officer stared at him. Who are? Captain Jake Morrison, Terran Federation Special Operations. Move. The authority in his voice was absolute. The officer moved. Within 10 minutes, Jake had transformed from diplomat to combat commander. He stood in the colony's emergency command center, surrounded by displays showing the enemy landing zones. Caltherian dropships were deploying troops across the colony. 3,000 soldiers at least. Maybe more. Governor Sarat looked at the numbers and seemed to age a decade. We cannot fight this. We should surrender. They're targeting civilian shelters, Jake said, pointing at the display. These aren't regular Caltherian military. Look at their markings. Vera leaned closer and felt ice in her stomach. Revanchists. The hardliners, who rejected the peace treaty, which means they're not here to occupy. They're here to kill. Jake's voice was flat, emotionless. Especially the humans living here. Jake's voice. Whether consider. Jake's voice skill. Jake's voice skill. Jake's voice. Jake's voice skill. Then what do we do? Sarat asked. Jake studied the map for another moment. Then he started giving orders. Fast, precise, tactical. He divided the security forces into small mobile units. He identified choke points in the colony's layout. He designated supply caches and fallback positions. Within minutes, he had created a defensive plan from nothing. We can't win, one of the security officers said. It's 20-to-1 odds. We don't need to win, Jake replied. We need to survive for 48 hours. That's how long until the nearest human fleet can get here. I've already sent the distress signal. 48 hours against 3,000? Yes. Jake looked at the man. You have a problem with that? The officer swallowed and shook his head. Vera watched all of this in something close to shock. Where was the gentle man who taught her chess? The one who cooked pasta and talked about history? This Jake Morrison was a stranger, cold, efficient, and utterly confident. Vera. Jake turned to her. I need you to lead one of the evacuation teams. Get the civilians from the outer districts to the central shelter. Can you do that? Yes, but... Good. Take Zin and 20 fighters. Move fast. The enemy will reach the outer districts in less than an hour. Jake. Wait. Vera grabbed his arm. Who are you? He looked at her, and for just a moment, she saw something familiar in his eyes. Regret. Maybe. Or apology. I'm the person I didn't want you to see. But right now, I'm the person these people need. We'll talk later. If there is a later. Then he was moving again, issuing more orders, coordinating defenses. Vera stood frozen for a heartbeat before Zin appeared at her side. Princess, we must go. Did you know? I read his service record. Captain Morrison was not just a pilot. He was Special Forces. Black Operations. They called him something during the war. Zin's expression was grim. The quiet death. The name sent a chill through Vera. Smiling over chess games, looking sad when he talked about his family. How could that person be connected to a name like that? Come, Princess. He is right. We must evacuate the civilians. Vera forced herself to move. She gathered her team and headed into the chaos of the colony. Explosions still rocked the sky. Buildings burned, but wherever she went, she found Jake's orders had preceded her. Security teams were moving civilians in organized groups. Supply points had been established. What should have been panic was becoming controlled evacuation. Her team reached the outer district and found 300 people hiding in their homes. Vera spoke to them in Caltherian, her voice calm and authoritative. Follow us. We will get you to safety. They moved through the streets, staying to covered routes. Twice they heard enemy dropships overhead. Once they saw revanchist soldiers in the distance. But they reached the central shelter without contact. As they entered the underground facility, an explosion rocked the entrance they had just passed through. Enemy fire. They had been seen. Revanchist troops were right behind them. Seal the doors, Zin shouted. But before they could, Jake appeared from nowhere with 5 fighters. He was carrying a rifle now, moving with fluid precision. Get them inside. I'll hold here. That is suicide, Zin said. That's an order. Jake's voice allowed no argument. He took a position at the entrance. His rifle aimed at the approaching enemy. Go. 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 Vera wanted to argue, to pull him back, but the civilians needed protection. She helped them through the doors while Jake and his small team opened fire on the advancing revanchists. The sound of gunfire echoed through the entrance. Vera caught glimpses of Jake through the chaos. He was not firing wildly. Each shot was controlled, aimed, lethal. Enemies fell with mechanical precision. He moved between cover points like water, never staying still, always firing. In less than 2 minutes, he and his 5 fighters had stopped an advance of 50 enemy soldiers. Fall back, Jake ordered. His team retreated into the shelter, and the massive doors sealed shut. Jake stood there, breathing hard, blood on his uniform. Not his own. He checked his rifle with practiced ease, then looked at Vera. Are you hurt? No. But you. I'm fine. 300. Maybe more. Good. He nodded, and then moved deeper into the shelter, already thinking about the next step. Vera followed him to the command post they had set up. The next hours were chaos. Reports came in from across the colony. Jake's mobile teams were hitting enemy positions and then disappearing. Supply depots were being destroyed. Enemy communications were being disrupted. The revanchists had numbers, but Jake had turned the entire colony into a weapon against them. On the tactical display, Vera watched red enemy markers slowly being reduced. Jake stood at the center of it all, coordinating 12 different operations simultaneously. He was calm, focused, terrifying in his competence. A captured enemy soldier was brought in. Jake interrogated him with cold efficiency. Where were the main forces? What were their objectives? The soldier tried to resist, but something in Jake's eyes made him talk. Within minutes, Jake had confirmed what he suspected. The revanchists were planning to execute every human in the colony, as a message. They wanted to restart the war. Then we make sure they fail, Jake said simply. He turned to Governor Surratt. I need you to trust me. I'm going to do things that will seem extreme. But I promise you, I will save as many people as I can. What are you going to do? Jake looked at the tactical map. I'm going to make them afraid. Over the next day, that is exactly what he did. Jake led strike teams into the heart of enemy positions. They collapsed tunnels, trapping enemy units. They rigged fuel depots to explode, destroying equipment and supplies. They ambushed patrols and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Vera fought alongside him, leading her own team. She saw him in combat and barely recognized him. The gentle diplomat was completely gone. In his place was something primal and unstoppable. Jake moved through enemy lines like a force of nature. Precise, lethal, and utterly without mercy. In one engagement, they were pinned down by enemy armor, 3 heavy tanks blocking their escape. Jake left his cover alone, carrying only explosive charges and moving through terrain the tanks could not follow. Vera watched through her scope as he systematically destroyed all 3 vehicles. When he returned, covered in dust and blood, she grabbed him. You could have died, but I didn't. He checked his rifle, and now those tanks can't kill anyone else. Jake? This is insane. You cannot keep doing this. He looked at her then. Really looked at her. His eyes were tired but clear. Yes, I can. This is what I am, Vera. This is what I've always been. I'm sorry. You have to see it. I do not understand. How can you be this person, and also the man who plays chess with me? They're the same person. Jake's voice was quiet. War does not change who I am. It just shows what I am willing to do to protect people I care about. And I care about these people. I care about this peace we have built. I care about you. R. The confession hung in the air between them. Around them, the war continued. Explosions in the distance. Screaming. Death. But in that moment, Vera saw Jake clearly for the first time. He was both the gentleman and the warrior, the diplomat and the killer, and he was using every part of himself to save lives. I care about you too, she said, which is why I need you to survive this. Then help me. He squeezed her hand briefly. We have 24 hours until the fleet arrives. We just need to hold on. They held on. Barely. Enemy casualties mounted into the hundreds, while Jake's forces lost only 37 fighters. The revanchists began to break psychologically. Their warriors spoke in fearful whispers about the human demon who appeared from nowhere, killed without sound, and vanished like smoke. General Thork, the revanchist leader, became obsessed with killing Jake personally. He demanded single combat, screaming challenges over every communication channel. But Jake ignored him, focused only on protecting civilians and surviving until reinforcement arrived. As the second day dawned, explosions lit the sky. But these were different. Human ships had arrived in orbit, engaging the revanchist fleet. Help had come. Jake stood at the command center, watching the tactical display. Relief washed over his face, making him look young and vulnerable again. Then, he collapsed. Vera caught him before he hit the ground. Jake! I'm okay, he mumbled. Just tired. But when she pulled back his jacket, she saw blood. He had been wounded multiple times and had said nothing. Had kept fighting on willpower alone. You fool, she whispered. You absolute fool. Had to keep everyone safe, he said, his eyes closing. Had to keep you safe. Medical teams rushed over. As they carried Jake away, Vera stood in the command center, surrounded by the evidence of his impossible defense. 2 days, 3,000 enemy soldiers, and somehow he had kept the civilians alive. Commander Zinn approached her. Your husband is a terrifying man, Princess. Yes, Vera agreed. He is, but as she looked at the door where they had taken Jake, she realized something else. Jake woke in a medical bay 12 hours later. His body hurt everywhere. The doctors had patched 3 bullet wounds, treated burns, and stabilized his blood loss. He should have been dead, but he was not. His body had been through worse during the war. The first thing he saw was Vera. She sat in a chair beside his bed, her golden eyes watching him. She looked exhausted. "Hey," he said, his voice rough. "Do not hey me." Her tone was sharp. "You fought for 2 days with 3 bullet wounds. You could have died. But I didn't. That is not the point." Vera leaned forward. Jake closed his eyes. He had known this conversation would come. "I did not want to frighten you. You married a diplomat, not a soldier. I married you. All of you. Even the parts you wanted to hide." She took his hand. "I am not frightened of you, Jake Morrison. I am angry that you thought you needed to hide." He opened his eyes and looked at her. There was no fear in her expression. Only concern and something else. Something warm that made his chest tighten. "I wanted to be different for you. Better than what I was during the war. You are not different. You are exactly who you have always been. A man who protects people." Vera's grip tightened. "That is not something to hide. That is something to be proud of." Before Jake could respond, Admiral Carter entered the medical bay. Behind her came Commander Zinn and several other officers. The Admiral looked at Jake with a mix of relief and exasperation. "Captain Morrison. Good to see you awake. Admiral, status report? The revanchist fleet has been destroyed. We captured most of their ground forces. General Thorke escaped to the surface with his elite guard. About 200 fighters. They are holed up in the old mining facility in the northern mountains." Jake tried to sit up. Pain shot through his body, but he pushed through it. He needs to be captured before he becomes a symbol for other extremists. "Agreed. We are preparing an assault team. I am going with them." "The hell you are," Vera said immediately. Admiral Carter raised an eyebrow. "Captain, you can barely stand." "I think General Thorke knows me. He is obsessed with me. If I am there, he will focus on me instead of killing hostages." Jake looked at the Admiral steadily. "You know, I am right. You are also injured. I have been injured before. It does not stop me from doing my job. Restless. Until never." The room was silent. Finally, Admiral Carter nodded. 6 hours. That is how long the medical team says you need before you can move safely. Use that time to rest. Then, you can join the assault. After everyone left except Vera, Jake lay back on the bed. He felt her staring at him. "Say it," he told her. "Say what?" "Whatever you are thinking. You have never hidden your thoughts before." Vera was quiet for a long moment. "During the war, my people had stories about human soldiers. We said they were weak, small, easy to break. But then we fought you, and learned we were wrong. Humans were terrifying because you never stopped. You lost battles and kept fighting. You lost soldiers and kept advancing. You should have surrendered many times, but you never did. Stubbornness is a human trait. It is more than that. It is will. Pure, absolute will." She looked at him directly. "I saw that will in you these past 2 days. You should have fallen a dozen times. But you kept moving, kept fighting. The revanchists started calling you something. Did you know?" "No. The god of war. They said you fought like one of our ancient battle deities given flesh." Vera's voice was soft. "And watching you, I believed them." Jake did not know what to say to that. He had never thought of himself as anything special. Just a soldier doing his job. "I am not a god. I am just a man who is very good at violence." "No, you are a man who is very good at protecting people. There is a difference." 6 hours later, Jake stood with the assault team in a transport heading toward the northern mountains. His body still ached, but the medical team had given him drugs that dulled the pain. Beside him, Vera wore combat armor. He had tried to convince her to stay behind. She had refused. "Where you go, I go," she had said. "We are partners." Now they flew over the ruined colony toward the mining facility. Intelligence showed that General Thork had fortified his position. 200 elite revanchist warriors, heavily armed, in a defensible location. The assault team numbered 50. Not good odds. Jake studied the tactical displays. The mining facility was built into the side of a mountain, with multiple levels and dozens of tunnels. Perfect for defenders, terrible for attackers. He needed an advantage. "There," he said, pointing at a map. "The old ventilation system. It is supposed to be sealed, but these structures always have weak points. If we can breach it, we can come up inside their perimeter." The team leader, a human major named Cole, frowned. "That is a tight space. We would be vulnerable if they discovered us. Then we make sure they are looking somewhere else." Jake pulled up another section of the map. "We send a small force to attack the main entrance. Draw their attention. While they are focused there, the real assault team comes through the ventilation system." "Who leads the distraction?" Jake met his eyes. "I do. Absolutely not," Vera said, immediately. "It has to be me. Thork wants me. If he knows I am at the main entrance, he will commit all his forces there. It is the only way this works." Major Cole considered it. "He is right. But Captain Morrison, you understand you will be pinned down with minimal support? The distraction team will be 5 people at most." "I understand. Then I am one of the 5, Vera said. "Vera, do not argue. I am a warrior of the Caltherian Empire. I fight." Her tone allowed no disagreement. Zin stepped forward. "I will join as well. The princess does not go into danger without me." 2 more soldiers volunteered. 5 total for the distraction. 45 for the actual assault. Jake confirmed the plan with Major Cole, then checked his weapons. 2 rifles, a sidearm, and a combat knife. Not much for facing 200 enemies, but it would have to do. They landed a kilometer from the facility and split up. Jake's small team approached from the front, while the main force circled toward the ventilation access. The mining facility loomed ahead, built into gray stone, with weapon emplacements visible on the walls. "They have seen us," Zin reported, watching his scanner. "Good." Jake raised his rifle and fired a single shot at the main gate. It rang out like a bell in the mountain air. The response was immediate. Alarms blared. Caltherian warriors poured onto the walls, their weapons trained on Jake's position. A voice boomed over speakers. "General Thork, the human comes to me." Finally. The coward, who hides and strikes from shadows. Jake activated his communicator so his voice would carry. "I am here, General. You wanted single combat? I am offering it." Thork's laugh was harsh. "You think I am a fool? You are wounded, tired. You come here because you are desperate. You are desperate. I come here because your war is over. Surrender, and your warriors will be treated with honor." "Honor? You speak to me of honor?" Thork appeared on the wall, a massive Caltherian in battle armor. Even from a distance, Jake could see his fury. "You have killed hundreds of my soldiers. You turned our own tactics against us. You made warriors fear shadows. There is no honor in that. There is survival. There is protecting innocence. That is all the honor I need. Then come, human. Show me this honor up close." Jake signaled his team to take cover. Then he stepped into the open, walking toward the facility. Weapons tracked him from every wall. One command from Thork, and he would be dead in seconds. But Thork did not give that command. He wanted this. Wanted to face Jake personally. It was a matter of pride. Jake kept walking until he was 50 meters from the gate. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the massive doors began to open. Caltherian warriors poured out, forming a circle. In the center, General Thork descended from the wall. He was enormous, easily 7 feet tall, with armor that bore the marks of countless battles. They faced each other across the open ground. "You are smaller than I expected," Thork said. "I get that a lot. You have killed many of my warriors. You have earned a warrior's death. I will give you that much." Thork drew a massive blade. "But first, tell me how you did it. How did you hold against 3,000? What strategy could possibly work against such odds?" Jake looked at him steadily. "I made your warriors fight on my terms, not theirs. I made them afraid, and I never stopped moving forward. Fear is not honor. No, but it keeps people alive. And that is what matters." Thork snarled and charged. Jake moved. Despite his injuries, despite the exhaustion, his body remembered. Years of training. Years of combat. He ducked under Thork's first swing, rolled to the side, came up with his knife. He could not match the Caltherian's strength or reach, so he did not try. Instead, he used speed. Cut and move. Strike and retreat. Every blow precise, aimed at joints in the armor, vulnerable spots. Thork was powerful, but Jake was trained. The combat was brutal. Thork landed blows that would have killed most humans. Jake took them, ignored the pain, and kept fighting. From her position, Vera watched in shock. Jake was outmatched in every physical way, but he fought with a technique that was almost art. Every movement efficient. Nothing wasted. He was reading Thork's patterns, exploiting openings, turning the Caltherian's own momentum against him. The fight lasted 5 minutes, then 10. Thork began to slow, confused by this human who would not fall. Jake's injuries were bleeding again. But he did not stop. Could not stop. Finally, Jake saw his opening. As Thork overextended on a swing, Jake stepped inside his reach. The knife flashed once, twice. Critical strikes to the general's armor joints. Thork stumbled. Jake swept his legs, and the massive Caltherian crashed to the ground. Jake's knife went to Thork's throat. The watching warriors tensed. One move, and they would fire, killing Jake and probably Vera's team as well. But Jake did not kill. "Yield," he said, breathing hard. "This is over." Thork stared up at him. "You should kill me. I should. But I'm trying to build peace, not add to the body count." Jake pressed the knife harder. "Yield, and your warriors go home. Fight, and they all die here. Choose." For a long moment, Thork said nothing. Then, slowly, he placed his hand flat on the ground. The Caltherian gesture of surrender. "I yield." Jake stepped back. Around them, the revanchist warriors lowered their weapons. Zin and Vera emerged from cover. Weapons still ready. Through the tunnels, Major Cole's assault team poured in, securing the facility. It was over. Thork struggled to his feet, his armor damaged. He looked at Jake with something between hatred and respect. "You are a strange warrior, human. You fight like a god of war, but show mercy like a priest. I am just a soldier who wants to go home." "To her?" Thork glanced at Vera. "The princess?" "Yes." Thork made a gesture that Jake had learned meant acknowledgement. "Then, you have won. More than this battle, human. You have won something worth fighting for." As the revanchists were secured and transported away, Jake finally allowed himself to collapse. Medical teams rushed over. Vera knelt beside him, her face pale. "You are an idiot," she said. "I know. You could have died. I know. I love you." Jake's eyes opened wide. Through the pain and exhaustion, he stared at her. "What?" "I love you," Vera repeated. "I have been trying not to. Trying to keep this just a partnership, but watching you fight. Watching you protect people. Watching you show mercy when you could have taken revenge." She touched his face. "How can I not love you?" Jake reached up and took her hand. I love you too. Have for a while now. Just did not know how to say it. You just fought 200 warriors for me. I think that said enough. One. They smiled at each other, bloody and exhausted, surrounded by the aftermath of battle. It was not romantic. It was not perfect. But it was real. And for Jake Morrison and Vera Talshin, that was more than enough. 2 weeks after the Battle of New Kelthos, Jake lay in a hospital bed on a Federation medical station. His wounds were healing well. According to the doctors, 3 weeks of recovery, they said, before he could return to duty. He was terrible at resting. Vera had not left his side except when forced to attend diplomatic meetings. She sat in a chair reading reports on her datapad, occasionally glancing over to make sure he had not tried to escape again. He had attempted it twice already. I can feel you staring, Vera said, without looking up. I am not staring. I am appreciating. You are restless, the doctors said. Rest. I have been resting for 2 weeks. I am going to go insane. Jake tried sitting up and immediately regretted it. His ribs protested sharply. Vera set down her pad and came to his bedside. She gently pushed him back down. You fought for 2 days straight, then dueled a Caltherian general. While wounded. Your body needs time. My body is fine. Your body has 17 stitches, 2 cracked ribs, and severe muscle trauma. She raised an eyebrow. Would you like me to continue? Jake sighed. No. Good. She sat on the edge of his bed, her expression softening. I know you are restless. But you have done enough, Jake. Let others handle things for a while. Are they handling things well? See for yourself. Vera activated a holographic display. News feeds appeared, showing footage from across both empires. The headlines were all about New Kelthos, about the defense against impossible odds, about a human captain who had saved thousands of lives. More importantly, they showed the reaction. Caltherian citizens were speaking out in support of the peace. They had seen a human fight with honor, had seen him show mercy to defeated enemies. The narrative was changing. Humans were no longer just the enemy. They were potential allies. Your father sent a message, Jake said. I saw it yesterday. I know. He wants to give you the Star of Kelthos. Vera smiled slightly. You will be the first human to receive it. I do not want medals. I know. But you are getting one anyway. My father was very impressed. He said you fought like one of our ancient warriors. High praise from him. Jake was quiet for a moment. How do you feel about all this? Your people praising a human who killed hundreds of Caltherians? They were revanchists. Extremists who tried to murder civilians. You stopped them. Vera took his hand. I am proud of you. My people are learning to be proud of you too. That is what we wanted. Is it not? For our peoples, to see past their hatred? Yes. But I did not expect it to happen because I became good at killing. You became good at protecting. There is a difference. She squeezed his hand. Though I admit, watching you fight was terrifying. I had nightmares about it. I am sorry. Do not be. I needed to see all of you. The gentleman and the warrior. Both are you. Both are who I love. Those words still made Jake's chest feel warm. Love. They had said it in the heat of battle, but it had not faded in the days since. If anything, it had grown stronger. He pulled her closer and kissed her. She responded, careful not to hurt his injuries, but there was real passion there now. No more holding back. No more pretending this was just a political arrangement. When they pulled apart, Vera rested her forehead against his. A Caltherian gesture of intimacy. When you are healed, we need to talk about our future. What about it? This was supposed to be a temporary marriage. For politics. But I do not want it to be temporary anymore. Neither do I, Jake said immediately. I want this to be real. All of it. Then we tell our governments. We make them understand this is not just for show. Vera pulled back to look at him. Are you ready for that? My people will have expectations. They will want children to secure the alliance. I want children. With you. When we are ready. Her smile was radiant. Good. Because I want that too. A knock on the door interrupted them. Admiral Carter entered, followed by Commander Zinn and several other officers from both species. The Admiral looked at Jake with her usual no-nonsense expression. Captain Morrison, I have news. Good or bad. Both. Good news. The revanchists have been fully disbanded. General Thork is cooperating with interrogations. We have identified and arrested most of the leadership. The threat is over. And the bad news? You are being recalled to Earth for a formal ceremony and debriefing. Emperor Tal Shin is coming as well. Both governments want to turn this into a major diplomatic event. Carter's expression suggested what she thought of diplomatic events. 3 weeks of ceremonies, speeches, and meetings. Jake groaned. I hate ceremonies. Too bad. You are a hero now. Both empires want to parade you around. Carter allowed herself a small smile. Could be worse. You could be back in combat. At least in combat. I know what I am doing. Vera laughed. You will be fine. I will be there. With you. That is the only reason I am agreeing to this. 3 weeks later, Jake stood in formal dress uniform on Earth, in the Great Hall of the Federation Council. Vera stood beside him, in traditional Caltherian formal robes. Thousands of people filled the hall, and billions more watched across both empires via broadcast. Emperor Tal Shin himself had come to present the Star of Kalthos. The massive Caltherian ruler approached Jake with the medal. A crystal star that glowed with inner light. In Caltherian culture, it was the highest military honor, given to warriors who showed exceptional courage, skill, and honor in battle. Captain Jake Morrison, the Emperor said in his deep voice, speaking in standard so all could understand. You have shown valor beyond measure. You protected my people when you could have chosen revenge. You showed mercy to defeated enemies when you could have shown cruelty. You honor both our peoples with your actions. He placed the medal on Jake's chest. The crowd erupted in applause. Jake stood at attention, trying not to look as uncomfortable as he felt. He was a soldier, not a politician. This was Vera's world, not his, but when he glanced at her, she was smiling at him with such pride that he managed to smile back. The ceremony continued with speeches from various officials. They talked about peace, unity, and the future. Jake mostly tuned it out, until Admiral Carter stepped forward to speak. Captain Morrison served under my command for 7 years, she said. He was one of the finest officers I have ever known. When I asked him to volunteer for the marriage alliance, he did not hesitate. He understood that sometimes the hardest battles are not fought with weapons, but with patience, understanding, and sacrifice. She looked directly at Jake. He taught us that strength is not just about fighting. It is about knowing when to fight and when to build bridges. Captain Morrison, you have made your service, your family, and your species proud. More applause. Jake felt emotion tighten his throat. Carter rarely gave praise. Hearing it now, in front of everyone, meant more than any medal. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Jake and Vera moved through crowds of diplomats, military officers, and politicians. Everyone wanted to speak with them, to congratulate them, to ask about their marriage and their plans. Jake was exhausted by the time they finally escaped to a private balcony overlooking the city. Earth's sun was setting, painting the sky in oranges and reds. Vera stood beside him, her hand in his. That was horrible, Jake said. It was necessary. I know. Does not make it less horrible. Vera laughed. You fought a general in single combat but are defeated by a reception? Fighting, I understand. Small talk with politicians, I do not. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sunset. Finally, Vera spoke. What do you want, Jake? After all this? When the ceremonies are over and things return to normal? Jake thought about it. 6 months ago, he would have said he wanted to go back to military service. To fight. But that was before Vera. Before New Kalthos. Before he realized there was more to life than combat. I want to continue the diplomatic work, he said, traveling between worlds, building connections. But I want to do it with you, as a real partnership, as husband and wife. Not just for politics? Not just for politics. He turned to face her fully. I want a life with you, Vera. A real life. I want to wake up next to you. I want to argue about whose turn it is to cook. I want to teach our children about both our cultures. I want all of it. Vera's eyes shone with unshed tears. That is what I want too. A real marriage. A real family. Not for our governments. For us. Then let us make it happen. She kissed him then, deep and passionate, the setting sun painting them both in gold. When they pulled apart, she rested her head on his shoulder. Do you think the peace will last? She asked quietly. I think it has a chance. We have proven that humans and Kaltharians can work together, can care for each other. That is more than most people thought possible a year ago. And if it does not? If war comes again? Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then we will face it together. Whatever comes, we face it together. Together, Vera agreed. 5 years later, their daughter played in a garden on a colony world. She had her mother's golden eyes and her father's dark hair. Her name was Maya, meaning illusion in human language and hope in Kaltharian. She was 3 years old and already showed signs of having inherited traits from both species. Hybrid children were still rare, still studied by scientists trying to understand the genetics. But Maya was healthy and happy. Jake watched her chase butterflies through the flowers. Vera sat beside him on a bench, her hand resting on his knee. They lived on the Covenant still, traveling between worlds. But they had established a home on this colony, a place where humans and Kaltharians lived side by side. She has your stubbornness, Vera observed, as Maya refused to give up on catching a butterfly. And your determination, Jake replied. A dangerous combination. The best kind. Maya finally caught the butterfly, cupped gently in her small hands. She ran over to show her parents, her face alight with joy. Jake knelt down to examine it with her. The butterfly's wings were iridescent blue, a native species to this world. Pretty, Maya said in a mix of English and Kaltharian. Very pretty. But we should let it go. Okay? It needs to be free. Maya thought about this, then carefully opened her hands. The butterfly flew away. She watched it go with wide eyes. Will it come back? Maybe. If we are patient and kind, like peace. Jake looked at his daughter in surprise. You said peace is like butterflies. We have to be patient and kind or it flies away. Jake glanced at Vera, who shrugged. I may have told her one of your metaphors. He laughed and picked up Maya, holding her close. Yes, exactly like that. We have to take care of peace. Maya hugged him. I will help take care of it, Papa. I know you will, sweetheart. Later that evening, after Maya was asleep, Jake and Vera sat on their balcony. The colony stretched out below them, lights from human and Kaltharian homes mingling. In the distance, they could see the memorial to those lost at New Kalthos. The colony had been rebuilt, stronger than before. Do you ever regret it? Vera asked. Volunteering for this marriage? Never. You? Never. She leaned against him. I married a human for peace, but I stayed married because I fell in love. I promised to fight for peace, Jake said. But the real fight was learning to trust someone, learning to love. That was harder than any battle. And you won. We won. Together, they sat in silence, watching the stars come out one by one. The galaxy was still vast and often dangerous. There were still tensions between species, still conflicts to resolve. But there was also hope. Children like Maya growing up, knowing both cultures. Colonies where different species work together. A future that was brighter than the past. Jake thought about the title people had given him after New Kalthos. The God of War. He had hated it at first, but Vera had told him something that changed his perspective. Gods of war in our mythology do not just fight, she had said. They also protect. They also bring peace when the fighting ends. That is the God you are. Maybe she was right. Maybe true strength was not just about fighting. It was about knowing when to fight and when to choose peace. When to show mercy. When to build instead of destroy. He looked at Vera. At the home they had built together. At the future they were creating for their daughter. This was what he had fought for. This was what all those battles had been about. Not victory, not glory, but the chance for people to live in peace, to love across boundaries, to build something better. What are you thinking? Vera asked. That I am exactly where I am supposed to be. With me? With you. She smiled and kissed him. And in that moment, Jake Morrison knew that the war was truly over. Not because the fighting had stopped, but because something better had taken its place. Love, family, hope, the things worth fighting for, the things worth living for. And with Vera by his side and their daughter sleeping safely in the next room, Jake finally allowed himself to believe that the peace they had built would last. Not because it was easy, not because everyone agreed, but because people like them would fight to protect it every single day. Not with weapons, not with violence, but with patience, understanding, and the stubborn refusal to let hatred win. That was the real victory. That was the real peace, and it was worth everything they had sacrificed to achieve it.